Alright, so I'm going to be doing a review of Vengeance of the Moon Knight, Volume 2. It's alive! Yeah. So, this is the second and final volume of the Vengeance of the Moon Knight run. Which, yeah, it does dovetail into a new storyline called the miniseries Phases of the Moon Knight, and then continues with Jed MacKay. This is part of the Jed MacKay Moon Knight run, I should have preferenced. And then it's going to go into Moon Knight Fist of Khonshu, which is going to be which is the new ongoing series. I gotta be honest, I feel like the Vengeance of the Moon Knight title was kind of superfluous. I feel like they should have just called it Moon Knight. I really feel like they should have just kept calling it Moon Knight for the... Because it's like, it's so weird to have like just 9 issues. 9 issues of this title when... it was just going to be renumbered for, to be just to be another Moon Knight title. I feel like it should have just been called Moon Knight. Remember when comic books used to be like there'd be this big changing event, but the storyline would still go for a while, and then it would go back to status quo? That's what I'm basically saying here. Is that I feel like retitling it Vengeance of the Moon Knight because who's Mark Spector getting a vengeance on? Oh, no one, because he's fucking dead right now. Yeah. So this is continuing because it has been a few months since I reviewed Volume 1. Basically, to remind you all, Mark Spector had died fighting Black Spectre, and there's been a new Moon Knight who's been going around attacking everyone left and right. And it turns out that the new Moon Knight is the Shroud, a D-list superhero who became a villain, who became a hero, who went back to being a villain. He's very messed up. And the Shroud basically wants to be Moon Knight because he's like, Mark was the only person who ever understood me, and I'm trying to, like, carry on his legacy, and if you won't do that, I'm going to kill you all. He's, like, freaking out. However, this does dovetail into another thing going on, which is Blood Hunt. Yep, like I said, this is another Blood Hunt tie-in. And basically, this one, just like Avengers, it really does feel like this was kind of required reading. Because much like with the other Avengers Blood Hunt, which deals with what the Avengers were doing boots on the ground, while the main Avengers team with Jed MacKay's team was off dealing with shit, what happened here is it's actually closest to what's a lot going on in Blood Hunt. Basically, in Blood Hunt, we had the resurrection of Mark Spector because Khonshu was locked up in Asgard after the events of Jason Aaron's Avengers run. So basically, Hunter's Moon and Tigra went on a mission with the Wrecker in order to free Khonshu from Asgard. And we actually get a whole issue talking about that, because in Blood Hunt, it's like, oh, we just did it. But here, it's like an extended moment of that release of Khonshu and the resurrection of Moon Knight. I also really like Tigra and Moon Knight together. I'm glad Jed MacKay is just like, fuck it, he's a furry. Fuck it, Mark Spector's a furry. And it's not like, and I know some people have said like, oh, Tigra and Mark's relationship doesn't feel like natural. That's where Jed MacKay goes, ah, you are wrong, good sir. Because if you knew... because clearly this dude... I don't know what it is, but I think Jed MacKay really likes West Coast Avengers. Because he calls back to that stuff a lot. Obviously using the Shroud. And another important piece is, of course, like I said... Tigra and Moon Knight were kind of a thing in... West Coast Avengers. They were a thing for a hot minute. Because everyone was so spooked by Moon Knight, but Tigra's like, he ain't nothing. So I do kind of like that we're kind of extending that relationship even more. But yeah, I also really like what I've liked about this Vengeance of the Moon Knight series was that we really get to see more of the other characters, spring out and shine more, like Soldier, the ex-Hydra agent that Mark redeemed. Then we have Reese, who is a vampire, also turned vampire, who Mark saved and is now like his side, almost like his Robin in a way. Not really. That was the best way I could describe it. And of course, Hunter's Moon, his brother, the other Fist of Khonshu, and even 8-Ball. 8-Ball's probably the most fun here because 8-Ball was this D-list speedball villain who's now like trying to redeem himself, and there's this great moment where like he sees Mark resurrected and he's like, I'm sorry, I was just trying to be a good guy, and you know, I thought I could change and I was trying to help people. And Mark goes, good job. And he's like, thank you. I fucking love 8-Ball. So the comic also does end with them like Mark being forced by Khonshu to hunt down Max, the Shroud, and it's very like it's like it almost feels like the comic itself does go, oh yeah, this comic did start with a new Moon Knight, you know, with and we don't really, that's the thing, because this is the second time Jed has killed a prominent character and had someone else take over the role. Of course, with Doctor Strange, and that was with Clea, but that one kind of lasted a little longer. Like, the Doctor Strange resurrection, the Doctor Strange death and Clea taking over as Sorceress Supreme lasted a little longer. Here, I think this was only, like, if you want to go by comics, not by months, but by, like, storyline, I think this was only, like, a few weeks that at best, the Shroud was Moon Knight. But I have heard that, like, they do more with him as another Moon Knight in the comics. So we'll see how that is. So, especially in phases of the Moon Knight. So I'm very curious to see that, because, again, that's kind of like the stopgap and the thing you got to read to move on to Moon Knight Fist of Khonshu. But again, I feel like this whole comic should have just been called Moon Knight, or, you know, just the end of this era of Moon Knight, because the Jed MacKay run is still going with Phases and Fist of Khonshu. But yeah, I still liked it. I do feel like it does get overshadowed, and it's the fastest resurrection of a character I have seen in a while. But yeah, I did like it. I really did like it, but I feel like it just should have been. It shouldn't have been a new. It shouldn't have been a new series. It really should have just been called Moon Knight and just been called, like, volumes 6 and 7. And then you move on to the new title. Anyway, so there you go. I do recommend Vengeance of the Moon Knight. It's a great continuation of arguably one of the best runs over at Marvel Comics. So, yeah. Anyway, but you guys tell me in the comments below, what did you guys think of this volume of Vengeance of the Moon Knight if you read it? Chris, thank you once again for sending me this comic. Other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.